Ukraine's precision strike aimed to blind Russia's defense network and collapse the Kremlin's energy command center.
The moment the negotiations collapsed, the war changed shape. Russia didn't compromise, it escalated, pushing hypersonic missiles onto launch rails as its answer to diplomacy. Ukraine responded with something far sharper: Operation Midnight Tempest, a strike designed to blind the Kremlin's western defense grid and carve straight into the nerves of Russia's war machine. No warning, no buildup, just a swarm of Ukrainian drones slipping across the border like steel shadows, aiming for the heart of Moscow's surveillance empire. If you want more in-depth battlefield breakdowns like this, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. 0302 AM Istanbul. What was supposed to be a 90-minute emergency dialogue between Ukraine and Russia disintegrated in 11 minutes and 24 seconds. The Russian delegation arrived with a folder stamped "Final Conditions." Inside were not proposals, but ultimatums. Demands that would have erased 38% of Ukraine's sovereign territory from any future map. Ukraine's foreign minister closed the folder without reading page 2. His exact words: "If this is your peace, then you prefer war." By 0315 AM, satellite feeds from Europe's Sentinel-9 picked up an unmistakable escalation. 14 Kh-47 M2 hypersonic missiles being rolled onto active launch rails near Kursk. This was not saber rattling, it was pre-ignition, a preparation for a strike package capable of hitting Kyiv in 9 minutes. Kyiv's response was not panic, it was calculation. At 3:27 AM, the Ukrainian General Staff unlocked Protocol Delta Black, codename Operation Midnight Tempest, a plan designed not to retaliate, but to blind. The chosen target, the Volnaya superconductive relay complex, a seemingly obscure node deep inside Russia. But in reality, the core that powers 62% of the Western Russian early warning radar grid. Destroying it wouldn't cripple Russia's military, it would silence it. For 48 to 96 hours. A blackout window unprecedented in the history of the Russian Federation. Engineers warned that the Volnaya complex housed 3 cryogenic transformers, each costing $70 million and requiring 15 to 17 months of fabrication. No spares existed. Not a single one. Ukraine's commanders exchanged one look. If Russia wanted escalation, Ukraine would give them inevitability. And as the final decision clicked into place, the transition was silent, almost gentle. Begin the storm. 2:43 AM, the northern border. The night is so still it feels scripted, until the earth begins to hum. Not from tanks, not from jets. From 36 UA-29 Chimera long-range strike drones, slipping across the frozen frontier like blades on wet glass. Each drone is wrapped in a new microwave-absorbent polymer skin that reduces radar reflection by 99.2%. A number so high that Russian technicians once dismissed it as physically impossible. Tonight, that impossibility is flying right toward them. The Chimeras descend to 9 meters above ground, low enough that their shadows smear across the snow like stains of smoke. Their engines run in stealth low mode, producing just 27 decibels, quieter than a human whisper. For Russian radar operators, the screens are clean, too clean. Podlet K1 stations sweep 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, nothing. But the drones are already 74 kilometers inside Russian airspace. The route Ukraine selected is suicidal. 12 frozen ravines, 4 electromagnetic cold spots, and 2 civilian wind farms capable of generating turbulence strong enough to flip a light aircraft. Any miscalculation and the entire strike package would crash like dominoes. But not tonight. The Ukrainian guidance AI compensates for microgusts just 0.03 seconds after detection, faster than any human reaction time ever recorded. And so the Chimeras snake through terrain that no Russian pilot would dare fly in daylight. Then comes the moment of tension. At the 162-kilometer mark, a Russian border outpost switches on a mobile Gamma S-1 radar array. A sweep of green light washes over the valley. For a fraction of a second, one drone flickers on the Russian screen, a single pixel, before disappearing again. The operator assumes it's a weather glitch. He logs anomalous snow echo and returns to his thermos. What he dismisses as snow is an attack vector worth $38 million in coordinated hardware. And the drones keep moving.
Before we enter the first strike phase in the next chapter, tell me, are you ready to see how Ukraine forces Russia to fire first?
03:22 a.m. The sky above the Volnaya corridor is a dome of black glass, silent, empty, and waiting. Then, without warning, 10 Ukrainian UA-29 Chimera drones break formation and surge upward from 14 meters to 12,800 feet in just 15 seconds. The maneuver is brutal. It pushes their engines past thermal limits, forcing coolant pumps to scream at 212% load, a value that would normally trigger automatic shutdown. But tonight, every safety system is hard-locked in override. These 10 drones are not meant to survive. They are meant to be seen. At the Russian Early Warning Center near Yaroslavl, the radar operator blinks twice at his console. The screen erupts, 10 bright vectors blooming like a sudden constellation. Airborne targets, multiple, altitude rising rapidly. His voice cracks. No one expected activity at this hour. Certainly not a vertical climb of this scale. Within 38 seconds, the Russian response is unleashed. The first S-400 Triumph battery fires 448 N6DM interceptors, each missile worth $22 million. A second battery joins in with Buk M3 volleys, adding 6 more interceptors to the sky. Even the Peresvet ground laser system activates, something Russia usually reserves for strategic threats. Total Russian expenditure in the first 90 seconds, $104 million in ammunition alone. Total Ukrainian cost for the 10 sacrificial drones, $350,000 combined. The missiles cut through the night like spears of burning magnesium. One by one, the Ukrainian decoys detonate mid-air, flashing white, then falling as incandescent debris. The sky blooms with silent explosions, as if stars are dying above the snowfields. But the point was never to win the duel. The point was to force Russia to fire, to expose launch signatures, radar frequencies, and reload timings. In their panic to intercept 10 cheap drones, Russia unintentionally reveals the position of 2 S-400 batteries, the active rotation arc of 3 Buk M3 launchers, the standby cycle of Peresvet's cooling chamber, and the dead angle sectors between overlapping defensive grids. In other words, the entire kill box around the Volnaya superconductive relay. Meanwhile, on the ground, unnoticed, 26 remaining chimeras crawl through the radar floor, slipping under the chaos like shadows sliding beneath a burning roof. The Russian officers cheer. They think the threat is over. They think they've won. But the sky they just cleared is not a victory. It is an opening. A whole Ukraine carved with the lives of 10 drones. So the real attack can begin. And the next minute will decide whether Russia sees it coming. 03:25 a.m. The night over Volnaya bends. Not from explosions, not from wind, but from electric distortion. 12 remaining UA-29 Chimeras initiate ECHO-12, Ukraine's newest wideband low-frequency disruption suite. For a heartbeat, the air tastes metallic, charged like a storm swallowing its own lightning. And then it happens. Russian radar screens go blank. Not fuzzy, not degraded, empty. In the command cabin of the 96L6 early warning unit, the operator slams his console twice, convinced the system froze. But diagnostics return flawless. Power, stable. Cooling, nominal. Rotational speed, locked at 31 RPM. And yet, target detection dropped from 92% to 11% in 4 seconds. Across the region, chaos blooms. 4 Podlet K1 radars enter emergency self-check mode 3 Gamma S. 1 arrays lose altitude resolution. 2 Nebo M systems report signal inversion. A failure never recorded before. The Regional Fusion Center registers 172 simultaneous false targets. To Russian technicians, it looks like a cyber attack. To the chimeras below, it looks like a red carpet. For 28 uninterrupted seconds, Ukraine forces every radar in a 70-kilometer radius into blindness, an achievement no NATO jamming sortie has ever recorded. The fact that it's done by drones, that's the part Moscow will never admit publicly. Russian officers frantically reboot systems. Podlet number 3 is the first to return online. But by the time it completes the reboot cycle at second 41, the valley is already compromised. The 26 Chimeras have split into 3 attack groups, each slipping through dead-angle corridors exposed earlier by Russia's own missile fire. They glide at 11 meters, beneath the radar lobe, tracing the frozen river like surgical blades. Russian comm screens light up with warnings: unknown low-frequency activity, signal scatter detected, possible decoys. No one realizes these are not decoys. They are surgical tools, and they're already past the outer defensive ring. The storm has not just begun, it has already arrived. 03:29 a.m. Volnaya's silhouette rises from the snow like an iron cathedral, cold, towering, and utterly unprepared. 14 Chimeras peel off from the main formation, climbing from 11 meters to a lethal corridor at 90 to 120 meters, the altitude where Russian autocannons should be strongest. But tonight, strength means nothing. The first Panzer opens fire with a roar that tears the silence apart. A hailstorm of 1,800 rounds per minute rips through the air, turning the night sky into a burning grid of orange tracers. 5 Chimeras die instantly, shredded into metallic dust. But 9 survive. And that is all Ukraine needs. They dive. The first strike slams into plasma capacitor number 4, a cylinder storing 800 kilovolts of raw energy. The detonation is biblical. A flash so bright it's recorded by weather satellites 132 kilometers away. Inside the facility, gauges spike from minus 196 degrees Celsius to 1,240 degrees Celsius in 0.6 seconds, triggering a catastrophic superconductive quench. Liquid helium floods the chamber, vaporizing into a white fog that bursts through the roof like a volcanic geyser. The second wave hits the megaflux voltage regulator, a $110 million masterpiece designed to stabilize Russia's radar grid. The explosion severs every control conduit, sending a surge back into the cryogenic loops. Then comes the finishing blow. 3 drones ram straight into the alpha superconductive core, the heart of Volnaya. When the core fractures, it doesn't explode, it implodes, collapsing inward before erupting outward in a shockwave that shatters windows 9 kilometers away. Lights across the valley flicker, then they die. Russia's most guarded node is now a burning crater, and the worst has not even started. 03:34 a.m. The shockwave reaches the regional control center in 0.7 seconds. A technician grabs his chair to stay upright as alarms scream through the bunker. The Volnaya relay, the brainstem of Russia's western radar web, is gone. System frequency plummets from 50 Hz to 39 Hz in 19 seconds, a death drop that forces 11 power stations to shut down to avoid turbine destruction. Screens go red across 5 oblasts. Substations revert to backup diesel generators that were never meant to carry the load. And then the real nightmare begins. 5 long-range radar stations, including 2 Nebo-M arrays, lose all cryogenic capacity. Their superconductive circuits shut down and enter hard freeze. Each one will take 6 to 9 days to recover. In that window, Russia's western airspace develops a 1,400 square kilometer blind zone, the largest since the fall of the Soviet Union. Worse, at 3:36 a.m., the automated UAV command net loses connection to 31 Russian reconnaissance drones mid-flight. They drift into dead zones unresponsive. 3 crash, 2 cross into Belarusian airspace, and trigger international alerts. In the civilian sector, 52,000 homes around Moscow lose electricity. Temperatures outside, minus 10 degrees Celsius. Inside, falling fast. An entire arm of Russia's defensive architecture has gone silent. The Kremlin orders an emergency blackout on all media transmissions. But satellites don't obey Russian censorship. Images of the burning Volnaya crater spread globally within minutes. This is no mere strike. It is a strategic amputation. And the world is about to see what happens when a military giant suddenly loses its eyes. As the flames of Volnaya clawed at the sky, one truth became impossible to deny. Ukraine hadn't just pierced a target. It had carved a wound straight into the architecture of Russian power. In 30 minutes of calculated precision, a force armed with machines no larger than compact cars dismantled systems worth billions, silenced radar networks once thought untouchable, and pushed the Kremlin into its deepest blackout in decades. But this was more than a tactical victory. It was a message, a warning, written in smoke and electricity. A reminder that in modern war, the battlefield no longer belongs to the biggest army, but to the one willing to strike from angles the enemy refuses to imagine. And what comes after this night is a question Russia is now terrified to answer. If you want the next chapter of this escalating conflict, let me know. Your voice shapes the story we uncover next.